this video, we will compare the biblical Antichrist to the Islamic Mahdi. The biblical Antichrist receives his power and authority from Satan, the Bible tells us. The Islamic Mahdi gets his power and authority from Allah. The biblical Antichrist ascends to power with only a small force, and we see that the Islamic Mahdi also ascends to power with only a few people supporting him. These people take him to the Kaaba and make bay'ah to the Mahdi. And it's after that, then he starts to get more of a following. Both the biblical Antichrist and the Islamic Mahdi are said to reign for 7 years. And the biblical Antichrist desires to rule the world. The Islamic Mahdi, it says 7 years or maybe 8 or 9, but we know if the Bible says 7, it will be 7. And he feels that he has a right to rule the world. Both the biblical Antichrist and the Islamic Mahdi will require an oath of allegiance. The Antichrist will be worshipped or submitted to, as we see when the false prophet says that we need to take the mark of the beast in order to buy and sell and basically live. You need to submit to the Antichrist and commit to following him and obeying him, worshiping him in that way. The Mahdi will be given bay'ah, which means the oath of allegiance, that people will be required to follow him and say that they will serve him and follow him and do what he says. And you will also have to take the Shahada, which is saying that there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet. When Isa, their Jesus, comes, he will require this of people. You will no longer be able to pay tax in order to live at peace in Muslim countries. You will either have to convert or die. The biblical Antichrist and the Islamic Mahdi will both prosper and succeed in all that they do. The biblical Antichrist, it says, will not be given royal majesty. He won't come from among kings, and he won't be a prince and expected to be in this position. And we see the same thing with the Mahdi. It says he's changed in one night. And according to what their eschatology teaches, he will not want to be Mahdi. He will, in fact, try to run from it. But it says he's changed in one night, that Allah changes him. And so he will accept that bay'ah, that oath of allegiance from those few people that have taken him to the Kaaba. And so it fits very well with the biblical eschatology saying that royal majesty is not given to him. It is Allah who chooses him and convinces him that he is the Mahdi. The biblical Antichrist will reward loyalty to those who follow him and submit to him. And it says that the Mahdi too will pour out wealth to people, to his followers. The biblical Antichrist is said to desire to change the laws or times. Maybe this is in regard to the Jewish law. We're not sure, but when we take a look at the Mahdi, we are pretty sure that he will be instituting Sharia law. And as we know, when they take over countries and things like that, that they want to put their lunar calendar in place for that nation as well. And so we see very likely that changes will be made to those countries that the Antichrist takes over, that Sharia law will be in place, and most likely it will change the calendar to the Islamic calendar. The biblical Antichrist is said to worship a god of war, which again, by seeing this, we realize that he is not being worshipped as God himself, because he has a God in essence, and he worships this god of war. And the Islamic Mahdi will be practicing jihad. So that fits very well again with the biblical idea of the Antichrist worshiping a god of war. The biblical Antichrist is said to be deceitful, and the Mahdi is able to use taqiyya, which is a practice that they can use deceit if it advances Islam. And then we have the abomination of desolation that takes place, that the Antichrist does in Jerusalem in the temple. And we see that the Mahdi prays in Jerusalem. So this possibly could be a form of abomination if he's praying in the Jewish temple. But we will just have to wait and see how that plays out. Besides the above mentioned, Islam, as Daniel mentions about the Antichrist and his empire, follows a God its father, which I would say is Abraham, did not know or follow. Islam denies Yahweh as the Father and Jesus as his Son. Islam does not worship Yahweh, the God of Abraham, and rejects all other religions. We also see in Micah and Isaiah that the Antichrist will be an Assyrian, and we know that the Mahdi is going to be an Arab. From the beginning, we have seen the conflict between Ishmael and Isaac, both sons of Abraham. This conflict has continued over all these years, and the hatred for the offspring of Isaac is lethal and fueling its beliefs onto the practices of Islam. In Genesis, we see where all this began. It was prophesied to Hagar and to Ishmael that Ishmael would greatly have his descendants multiplied, as with Hagar. They would be too numerous to count. Also, it is said that he will be a wild donkey of a man. He will be hostile to everyone, and everyone will be hostile to him. He will live away from his brothers. But God says that he will bless him and make him fruitful and give him a multitude of descendants. He will become the father of 12 princes, and he will be made into a great nation. We don't need to look for the Antichrist within the Illuminati or the Catholic Church. History has showed us that Islam is the embodiment of the spirit of Antichrist, and the conflict between the two brothers has been evident from the beginning. When studying Islamic eschatology, it shows us point by point how their Mahdi, the awaited one, and Isa fit the biblical bill of Antichrist and the false prophet.